Betrayal by blood is a wound that never truly heals, because it's not just about what was done, it's about who did it. When strangers betray you, you can walk away, you can rebuild, you can forget. But when the ones who gave you life are the ones who take away your trust, it feels like the ground beneath your soul gives way. It begins quietly, almost unnoticed, in the small ways they start valuing you not for who you are, but for what you bring. You start to see it in their eyes, the absence of warmth, the quiet calculation when they look at you, the way love slowly becomes conditional. You tell yourself it's temporary, that they are just struggling, that they'll come around. But deep down, something inside starts to break. Because how do you process the moment when home stops being safe, and the people you call family turn into strangers wearing familiar faces? At first, you don't believe it. You want to trust them. You want to hold on to the version of them who kissed your forehead and told you that you were their pride. You cling to the memories because they are all you have left to make sense of the confusion. But as their words turn sharper, and their actions colder, the illusion begins to crumble. You begin to question yourself: what did I do wrong? Why am I not enough? What could I have done to deserve this? And that's the cruelest part of betrayal by blood, it makes you doubt your own worth. You start carrying their guilt like it's your own. You take their lies and wrap them around your heart, believing that if you can just love them more, they'll love you back the same way. But love doesn't heal when it's one-sided. It only burns you deeper. The moment you realize you've been sold out doesn't come with fireworks, it comes with silence. The kind of silence that screams louder than words. Maybe it's a conversation you weren't meant to overhear, or a decision made behind your back that changes everything. The moment you see it, their betrayal, it's like watching the world collapse in slow motion. You stand there, stunned, searching their faces for a trace of remorse, for a sign that this isn't real. But all you find is justification. They tell you it was for your own good, that you wouldn't understand, that life forced their hand. But you know the truth. You see it in their eyes, they made a choice, and that choice wasn't you. That's when you stop asking why, because the answer doesn't matter anymore. You start to remember every warning sign you ignored. Every time they dismissed your feelings. Every promise broken with a smile. It all starts to piece together like a cruel puzzle, and the picture it paints isn't the family you once knew. It's a truth you never wanted to face, that love, when corrupted by greed or pride, can destroy more than hate ever could. You replay moments in your mind, searching for the point of no return, the moment everything changed. But sometimes, there is no moment. Sometimes, betrayal isn't sudden. It's slow, disguised as care, hidden beneath excuses and smiles. And by the time you realize what's happening, it's already too late. The nights that follow are the hardest. You lie awake wondering how you're supposed to love people who have hurt you this deeply. You want to hate them, but your heart refuses. You want to forgive them, but your wounds are still bleeding. So you sit in the middle of that war between love and anger, between pain and pride, and you start to lose yourself in the crossfire. You stop trusting easily. You stop opening up. You learn to protect yourself, but in doing so, you build walls so high even you can't see over them. That's what betrayal by blood does, it doesn't. And yet, somewhere within that pain, something begins to shift. You begin to see that their actions say more about them than about you. You start to understand that betrayal doesn't define your value, it exposes theirs. The people who sold you out didn't destroy you, they revealed themselves. And though the hurt remains, you start learning how to live with it. You learn to stop expecting closure, because sometimes the people who broke you will never apologize. You learn that healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about accepting that it happened and deciding that it won't control you. You begin to rebuild, not because they deserve your strength, but because you do. Through every tear, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt, you grow. You realize that family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by loyalty, by love that doesn't have conditions, by people who stand by you when life falls apart. The ones who betrayed you lose their place, but not your power. Because the moment you survive betrayal by blood, you become something unshakable. You become your own protector, your own family, your own strength. The pain may stay, but it transforms, it stops being a wound and becomes a reminder of what you've endured. And though they may have sold you out, they could never buy your spirit, because what they failed to see is that the very act of breaking you was what forged you into something they could never control. The price of innocence is a lesson learned not through books, but through betrayal that cuts too deep to be forgotten. When you grow up believing that love is unconditional, that parents are protectors, and that family means safety, you never imagine that trust could be used as currency. You think that loyalty will shield you, that your goodness will be enough to earn their love. But innocence is fragile, it doesn't survive in a world where people trade hearts for gain. When the people you believed in decide that your worth can be measured in what you offer, you start to notice things, whispers in corners, half-truths hidden behind forced smiles, the way their tone changes when they talk about you in front of others. At first, you tell yourself it's just stress, just misunderstanding. You give them the benefit of the doubt because that's what innocence does, it believes until belief becomes blindness. But deep down, something starts to shift. The warmth that once surrounded you turns cold. The hugs feel lighter, the smiles fade quicker, and suddenly home feels like a place you have to survive instead of belong to. You begin to realize that something precious is being taken from you, not your possessions, but your peace. And yet, even then, you still want to believe it's love. When you discover the truth, that you were never part of their plan, but part of their bargain, the world around you seems to shatter in slow motion. You hear the words, you see the actions, but your heart refuses to accept them. Because how could the people who once tucked you into bed now be the ones who traded your future for their comfort? You replay every moment, every smile, every lie disguised as care, and it all starts to make sense. The sacrifices they asked for, the choices they made on your behalf, the opportunities they claimed were too much for you, all of it had a price. And the price was you. Innocence, once lost, doesn't return, it transforms. It hardens into awareness, into survival, into quiet strength. The worst part isn't even the betrayal, it's the realization that you didn't see it coming. You were too busy trying to be good, to be enough, to make them proud. You carried their expectations like a crown, never realizing it was a collar. Every time they asked for more, you gave it, believing that love was something to be earned. You mistook manipulation for guidance, silence for respect, control for care. That's the cruelty of being innocent in the hands of those who see your purity as weakness. They shape you, use you, and when you begin to see the world differently. The lines between right and wrong blur. You stop seeing things in black and white because life has painted everything in shades of betrayal and truth. You learn that not everyone who calls themselves family deserves that title. You learn that love without respect is just another form of control. You learn that being naive doesn't make you weak, it just means you had the heart to trust. But trust, once shattered, rebuilds differently. It grows sharper, wiser, unyielding. You begin to understand that innocence was never meant to last forever, it's the seed that pain waters until it becomes strength. And as the days pass, you start reclaiming what was stolen. Not the past, you can't get that back, but your voice, your identity, your sense of worth. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop trying to prove your value to those who failed to see it. You begin to realize that the price of innocence was not the end of your story, it was the beginning of your transformation. Every tear becomes a reminder of what you've survived. Every betrayal becomes a teacher. You start setting boundaries, something you never dared to do before. You stop begging for the kind of love that hurts more than it heals. You start choosing yourself in ways that once felt selfish, but now feel necessary. In that transformation, you find a strange kind of peace. You no longer crave their approval because you've learned that some validation comes at too high a cost. You understand that the child who once wanted to be loved was not weak, she was pure, hopeful, and undeserving of their deceit. But now, she's gone, and in her place stands someone forged from pain and truth. Someone who understands that love is not meant to cage you, it's meant to free you. You carry your scars like armor, not shame. Because innocence may have been taken, but wisdom was born in its place. The fire that once burned you now fuels you. You stop waiting for apologies and start creating your own. The price of innocence was everything you thought you knew about love, family, and trust. But through that loss, you found something greater, clarity. You learned that people can only betray you once you give them the power to. You learned that your worth was never theirs to define. You learned that being sold out doesn't make you broken, it makes you aware. And awareness, unlike innocence, can never be taken from you. It stays with you, guiding you, reminding you that what was meant to destroy you became the very reason you rose. The day you stopped being innocent was the day you started being unstoppable. Falling into darkness doesn't happen in an instant, it happens in fragments, in moments that feel harmless at first but slowly carve away pieces of who you are. It begins when the world you trusted turns against you, when the faces that once brought comfort now bring pain. You try to hold on, to fight the feeling of slipping, but betrayal is heavy, it drags you down, one memory at a time. The silence in the room becomes louder, the shadows in your heart grow darker, and soon you realize that the light you once carried has started to fade. You stop recognizing yourself in the mirror. The spark in your eyes dulls, and the smile you wear becomes something rehearsed, something you show so people won't ask what's wrong. That's what falling into darkness feels like. It's not dramatic, it's quiet, it's suffocating, and it's lonely. At first, you deny it. You tell yourself it's just a bad phase, that things will get better, that the people who hurt you didn't mean it. You create excuses to make sense of the pain, because facing the truth feels unbearable. You cling to fragments of hope like they are lifelines, convincing yourself that love will fix everything. But deep down, you start to feel the cracks forming. Your chest feels heavier, your thoughts become louder, and the nights stretch longer than the days. You begin to lose track of time, because every day feels the same, an endless loop of pretending you're okay while drowning inside. And the more you hide it, the deeper you fall. The darkness doesn't come with warning, it seeps into everything. It follows you into conversations, into your thoughts, into your silence. You start pulling away from people, not because you don't care, but because you're tired of explaining pain that no one understands. You sit in crowds, but feel invisible, surrounded yet unseen. You start to lose interest in things that once brought joy. Music feels empty, laughter feels forced, and even sunlight feels like an intruder. You begin to crave isolation, not because you enjoy it, but because it's the only place where your sadness doesn't need an explanation. The walls of your mind become both prison and protection, keeping everyone out, but trapping you within. The worst part of falling into darkness isn't the pain, it's the numbness that follows. There comes a point when you stop feeling altogether. You don't cry anymore, you don't argue, you don't fight back. You simply exist. You move through life like a shadow, doing what's expected, but feeling nothing beneath the surface. People might call it strength because you don't break in front of them, but deep down, you know it's surrender. You've stopped hoping for better. You've stopped believing that things can change. And when hope dies, so does a part of you. The part that used to dream, that used to trust, that used to be. But even in darkness, there's a strange kind of clarity. When you lose everything that once defined you, you're forced to confront what's left. You begin to see the truth without illusions. The people you once placed on pedestals are revealed for who they are. The lies you believed begin to unravel. You start to see the world not as you wish it to be, but as it truly is. That truth cuts deeper than the betrayal itself, because it demands acceptance. You realize that no one is coming to save you, that no apology will fix what's broken. And in that painful realization, something changes. The tears stop, not because the pain is gone, but because you start saving your strength for survival. Falling into darkness teaches you things light never could. It shows you the strength hidden in surrender, the courage found in silence, the resilience born from suffering. It strips away everything false, false love, false loyalty, false hope, until only the truth remains. You learn that pain has a voice, and ignoring it only makes it louder. You start to understand that sometimes breaking is the only way to rebuild. You stop fearing the fall because you realize that at the bottom, there's nothing left to lose. And that emptiness, terrifying as it is, becomes a canvas. It's where transformation begins, though you don't see it yet. In the midst of that darkness, you find fragments of yourself scattered across the memories you tried to forget. You begin to gather them quietly, piece by piece, without knowing why. Maybe it's instinct, maybe it's defiance, maybe it's survival. But in doing so, you begin to remember that even the broken pieces belong to you. They are proof that you lived, that you endured, that you didn't disappear completely. The pain that once drowned you starts to shape you. You start seeing strength in your own reflection, even if faintly. You begin to realize that the darkness you fell into wasn't the end, it was the beginning of becoming someone new. But before that rebirth comes understanding. You sit with your pain. You stop running from it. You let it consume you until you've felt every ounce of it. It's brutal, it's raw, but it's real. You stop pretending to be fine, because pretending never brought healing. You learn to embrace your anger, your sadness, your emptiness, not as enemies, but as reminders that you're still alive. And slowly, without even noticing, you start rising, not because the darkness disappears, but because you've learned how to walk through it. You stop waiting for light to save you and start realizing that the light has to come from within. You fall, yes, but you don't stay down. The darkness doesn't destroy you, it introduces you to your own power. Rise through pain begins when the world has already taken everything from you, and there is nothing left, but your will to continue breathing. Pain doesn't just break you, it reshapes you, carving you into something you never expected to become. At first, you resist it. You want to run, to hide, to undo what happened. You tell yourself that strength means not feeling, that if you ignore the pain long enough, it will go away. But pain doesn't fade when you bury it. It grows roots, it digs deep, it waits patiently until you're ready to face it. And when you finally stop running, when you sit with it and let it burn, that's when transformation begins. Pain becomes your teacher, and every scar becomes a story of survival. You start by realizing that healing isn't pretty. It's messy, chaotic, and often silent. Some mornings you wake up ready to fight, and others you can barely get out of bed. You go through days where you hate the world for what it did to you, and nights where you hate yourself for still caring. But somewhere between all that chaos, a quiet voice starts to whisper that maybe pain isn't the enemy, it's the proof that you're still alive. You begin to understand that the very thing that broke you is also the thing keeping you awake, reminding you that there's still more ahead. You start to see pain as a forge, shaping you through fire, demanding that you rise stronger than before. When you rise through pain, it's not about pretending to be unhurt, it's about embracing every wound as a part of your evolution. You stop wishing for your old self back, because you realize that person could never have survived what you've been through. The version of you that emerges from pain is quieter, wiser, more deliberate. You no longer chase validation, because you've seen how easily people can betray it. You stop expecting others to save you, because you've learned that the only person who truly can is you. Every tear, every sleepless night, every moment you thought would destroy you, it all becomes the foundation of your strength. You rise, not in one triumphant moment, but in 1,000 small ones, each time you choose to keep going when giving up would be easier. There's a strange beauty in the process. You begin to see pain not as a curse, but as a guide. It teaches you to recognize real love, to value peace, to understand your worth in ways comfort never could. You start setting boundaries without apology, walking away from people who drain your soul, speaking truths you once buried. Pain gives you permission to outgrow the things that hurt you. It teaches you that sometimes losing everything you thought mattered is the only way to find what truly does. The same experiences that once. There are moments in that journey when you break again, not because you're weak, but because healing isn't linear. One memory, one scent, one song can send you spiraling back into the hurt you thought you had outgrown. But this time, you face it differently. You don't run. You let it wash over you, knowing it will pass. You've learned that pain doesn't control you anymore, you control how it moves through you. You've learned that strength isn't about being unshaken, it's about being able to rebuild every time life knocks you down. Each time you stand up again, it's not the same version of you that rises, it's someone fiercer, someone who knows that survival isn't luck, it's choice. Eventually, you begin to notice that the things that once triggered tears now spark understanding. You can think about what happened without collapsing under the weight of it. You can look at the people who hurt you without wanting revenge, because you've realized that the greatest revenge is peace. The pain that once consumed you becomes a story you can tell without trembling. You start finding meaning in the chaos, strength in the scars, and purpose in your past. You no longer need the world to recognize your growth, because you've seen it yourself. You can stand in the same place where you once fell, and know that you are no longer the same. Rising through pain also means forgiving yourself, for staying too long, for trusting too easily, for loving people who didn't deserve it. You stop blaming yourself for the way others chose to treat you. You begin to see that healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about making peace with it. You learn that closure doesn't always come from apologies, sometimes it comes from acceptance. You start to understand that your story isn't defined by the pain, but by what you did with it. And as you grow, the pain doesn't vanish, it just stops defining you. It becomes a shadow that follows quietly behind, reminding you of how far you've come. There comes a point when you no longer see yourself as a victim. You stop saying, "Why me?" and start saying, "Because of this." Because of the pain, you became resilient. Because of the heartbreak, you learned your worth. Because of the betrayal, you learned discernment. Pain stops being the villain in your story, and becomes the catalyst for your transformation. You realize that rising through pain isn't a single act, it's a lifelong process. Every time life tests you, you know the strength within you has already been proven. You rise not just for revenge, not just for closure, but because standing tall after being broken is your greatest form of defiance. And as you continue, you begin to appreciate the stillness that follows the storm. You can look back on everything that tried to destroy you and see it for what it was, a test, a lesson, a rebirth. The pain no longer feels like a prison, it feels like proof. Proof that you endured, that you evolved, that you turned suffering into power. You carry that strength quietly, not to show the world, but to remind yourself that you made it through the fire and came out shining. You rise not because you're unscarred, but because your scars tell a story of courage that no pain could ever silence. The power shift begins the moment you realize that the people who once controlled your life no longer have the same hold over you. It doesn't happen in one dramatic instant, it begins quietly, in small acts of defiance, in moments when you choose yourself instead of pleasing others. For so long, you lived under their influence, following their expectations, carrying the weight of their opinions, as if your worth depended on their approval. They made decisions for you, spoke for you, and convinced you that obedience was love. But power built on manipulation never lasts. There comes a time when the silence becomes unbearable, when you can no longer pretend that everything is fine, when the version of you they tried to create starts to crumb. At first, the shift feels terrifying. You've lived so long under their shadow that standing in your own light feels unnatural. You question whether you're doing the right thing, whether you're being selfish, whether you'll regret it. That's the conditioning speaking, the voice they planted in your mind to keep you from walking away. But with each decision you make for yourself, that voice grows quieter. You learn to listen to your instincts again, to trust your own judgment. You start seeing how much of your life was spent trying to please people who never intended to understand you. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop apologizing for existing, stop begging for love that comes with conditions, you feel a freedom that is both terrifying and beautiful. That's the essence of the power shift, it's reclaiming what they took without asking. The people who once held control over you start to notice the change. They'll test you, they'll guilt you, they'll try to pull you back into the same cycle, because your independence threatens their comfort. They'll call you ungrateful, disrespectful, rebellious. But this time, their words don't cut as deep. You've seen behind the mask. You understand that their control was never about love, it was about dominance. You start recognizing manipulation for what it is, fear of losing control. And instead of reacting, you start responding with silence, with distance, with boundaries. You learn that power isn't about shouting louder, it's about knowing when not to respond. That quiet confidence becomes your strength, and slowly, they begin to lose the grip they once had. The power shift also changes the way you see yourself. You stop viewing your past as something to be ashamed of and start seeing it as proof of your endurance. You realize that every time you were underestimated, you learned to adapt. Every time you were silenced, you learned to listen. Every time you were broken, you learned how to rebuild. You no longer see yourself as. This shift isn't just internal, it changes everything around you. The people who truly love you will notice your transformation and respect it. They'll see your boundaries not as walls, but as proof that you've learned your worth. Those who thrived on your weakness will start to fade away because they no longer recognize the person you've become. The world reacts differently to you when you walk with confidence. Doors that once seemed closed begin to open, not because they've changed, but because you have. You no longer wait for permission, you give yourself the green light. You stop seeking validation, because you've learned that the only approval you need is your own. As you continue to grow, you begin to notice something unexpected: peace. Not the fragile peace that depends on others behaving a certain way, but the kind that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. You start protecting your time, your energy, your emotions. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth, because your existence is proof enough. The more you honor yourself, the less power anyone has to hurt you. You stop reacting to old triggers, you stop chasing closure, and you stop explaining your healing to people who benefited from your pain. That is the real victory, the moment you realize that silence can be stronger than confrontation, that walking away can be more powerful than revenge. There's a calmness that comes with taking back control. You look back at the version of yourself who once begged for understanding and realize how far you've come. You no longer crave revenge, because power has shifted in your favor, not through anger, but through growth. You understand that the best revenge is not proving them wrong, but proving yourself right. You see that every hardship, every betrayal, every moment of powerlessness was preparing you for this. The control they once had is gone, and in its place stands something unshakable: your independence, your confidence, your truth. You've become. The ultimate revenge isn't found in anger or retaliation, it's found in peace. It's the quiet, unshakable strength of knowing that you survived what was meant to destroy you and turned it into the foundation of your growth. For a long time, you think revenge means making them feel what you felt, showing them the pain they caused, proving to them that they were wrong. You imagine the satisfaction of seeing their regret, their guilt, their downfall. But with time, you realize that true power doesn't come from making others hurt, it comes from no longer being controlled by the hurt they gave you. The ultimate revenge is freedom. It's healing so deeply that their actions no longer define you. It's walking away without bitterness, without explanations, without the need to be understood. At first, it doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like loss. You let go of people you once would have done anything for. You stop fighting battles that no longer serve you. You stop chasing apologies that will never come. You grieve, not just for what they did, but for what could have been, for the love you wanted but never received. The process is painful because you're unlearning everything you were taught about strength. You were told that power means control, but now you see that it means release. You were told that forgiveness means weakness, but now you understand it means liberation. The more you heal, the less space you have for resentment. You begin to see revenge not as something you take, but something you become. You become living proof that they didn't win. You start to rebuild quietly. You focus on yourself, on your peace, on your growth. You pour your energy into things that feed your soul instead of draining it. The same pain that once made you feel powerless now fuels your purpose. You stop waiting for life to be fair and start creating your own balance. Every step forward becomes a reminder that you're no longer trapped in the cycle they created. You learn that peace is not the ultimate. Revenge doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need anyone's validation. It's silent, personal, and profound. It's choosing not to react when they expect you to. It's refusing to let your anger dictate your story. It's walking past the people who doubted you with a calm they can't understand. They might still try to provoke you, still try to drag you back into the chaos, but you've outgrown it. You've learned that reacting gives them power, and silence takes it away. The very peace that confuses them is your victory. You no longer need to prove them wrong, because their actions speak louder than any words ever could. They remain trapped in their patterns, while you've moved beyond them. You begin to see your life change in ways you never imagined. Opportunities start to appear, not because luck found you, but because you cleared the space for them by letting go of what no longer served you. You attract better people, those who respect your boundaries, value your voice, and match your energy. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop settling and start deserving. That's what revenge looks like now, living a life that feels whole. You realize that the best response to betrayal isn't destruction, it's evolution. Every success, every smile, every peaceful night of sleep is a message to the universe that you refuse to be defined by the pain they caused. You've turned your suffering into strength, your scars into symbols, your story into power. There's a deep, quiet satisfaction that comes with this kind of revenge. It's not loud, but it's undeniable. The same people who once looked down on you now have to watch you rise. The ones who doubted your worth now see you thriving in peace. You don't need to gloat or remind them, they can feel it. The energy shifts, and they sense the distance. You've become untouchable, not because you're invincible, but because you've chosen peace over chaos. You've learned that the most powerful form of revenge. In time, forgiveness follows, not because they deserve it, but because you do. You forgive so you can sleep peacefully, so your heart can rest, so your future can breathe. You stop carrying their mistakes on your back. You stop replaying what happened, stop giving their actions power over your present. Forgiveness becomes the final act of rebellion, the declaration that you will not spend another day living in the shadow of their choices. You begin to see that revenge through peace is not about forgetting, it's about remembering without pain. You look back, and instead of anger, you feel gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons, for the resilience, for the person you became because of it. And eventually, you reach a place where you don't even think about revenge anymore. It becomes irrelevant because your life speaks for itself. You've outgrown the need to make them see, to make them understand. You realize that nothing you could do to them would ever compare to what you've built for yourself. You've transformed pain into purpose, betrayal into wisdom, loss into strength. The ultimate revenge is living well, not in spite of what they did, but because of it. It's standing tall, grounded in self-respect, surrounded by peace they can never touch. It's knowing that you've healed beyond their reach, that you've taken every wound and turned it into armor. You've become everything they never thought you could be: whole, unbothered, and free.